Hey guys, gas station here. I was originally going to do the Revelations podcast right now, but I realized after finishing the reply to me's that this podcast ended up being around 25 minutes. So this podcast is just going to be the reply to me's and my sort of final thoughts on Conquest. They aren't that great because I'm kind of foggy on the game already. So next podcast will be the beginning of the Revelations one, but this is just going to be the conclusion of the podcast one. So hope you guys like it. All right, this is a long reply to me by Max HP. Gast, I'm going to be real with you, and strap in because it's going to be a long and slightly disorganized one. I'm currently subscribed, but I've been aware and semi-following your channel since Manx' Conquest playthrough, occasionally checking in every now and then. And I'll be honest, I didn't like your commentary at all in that playthrough. I'd go so far as to say that you made it near unwatchable at some points. And since then, I've been admittedly pretty harsh on you in the comments I made in Manx's current Birthright run while comparing you to Ray. Like another commenter here, I was pretty salty over your comments about my room, about how my room appeals to people who don't have who don't have good social lives. Not because I have any particular fondness for that minigame or anything, but simply because it's a very asshole-ish thing to say to no matter what you're talking about. That combined with your Twitter account and my distaste for your Mangs commentary gave me the impression of you as some of equivalent to your standard frat boy asshole. I've since calmed down from that comment and I've watched more of you and these podcasts. The first 5 minutes of this video really surprised me because I thought it was surprisingly mature. You clearly care about your fan base and you like discourse and discussion. You can be incendiary at times, and that's still a worry I have about you if you do end up being a co-host for Mangs' Revelation run. I know you're leading in the straw poll by a very tiny margin. But at the same time, if I read between the lines and take out the emotion, I can usually find that you have an interesting perspective that does come from an experienced Fire Emblem player. I can admit that part of that blame does rest on me. The fact that I love Fates despite its numerous flaws, it introduced me to the series, and now I'm playing Path of Radiance and Rekka no Ken and really enjoying them. So it does hold a place in my heart. So I'd like to apologize even though you probably didn't know I said anything about you in the first place. I'd still like to see you be less inflammatory, but you've already seemed to have made an effort in that. Oh, well, thank you for the very well thought out comment. Let's see. Okay. So you didn't like my commentary at all, and that's fine. I mean, admittedly, it was not. I wasn't prepared at all for Conquest's playthrough. Mangs kind of asked me to do it, and I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'll do it." And it was like I didn't even ever play 3DS in my life, so I was just going off things that I knew about old Fire Emblem or pre 3DS Fire Emblem, and I was just kind of there for the story. Like it was my second run through of the plot because I read a Japanese a fanslation that went around before the release. And yeah, I mean people are sort of torn. I wouldn't say they're torn, but there's definitely a camp that really didn't like my commentary that much. And granted, like, it's totally acceptable. Like, I didn't play the game ever, and I was just piggybacking off Mangs the entire time, and trying to help with my ideas when I could. And then there were some who really thought I was very entertaining, and that's how it is. That's how entertainers work, I suppose. And sometimes it would probably be unwatchable. Yeah, I mean, I feel like in hindsight, pushing a lot of the jokes that we did. That I kind of took a foot first in was probably a little excessive at some points, and people did comment on that, and then we adjusted those jokes by either chilling him out or just straight up amputating them altogether. I never actually saw your comments on Ray's in the Birthright run, but it doesn't really matter to me. You have full rights to say whatever you want. I can't control what you want to say or what your feelings are, so that's totally fine. And this is something I feel like I should clarify, even though I can't quite remember what I said about the good social lives thing. I think what I meant when I said that was I think people who get really fixed on like their S rank, like their wife or husband, who get really like into that shit, is like, it's just so weird. Like, maybe they have good social lives, but to me it just comes off like, dude, like, what are you doing? How are you so fixated on a fictional character? Like, I respect the polish, I suppose, for lack of a better term, for letting each character sort of have a sort of like a flair on their opinion of the visits, and I appreciate the time they took into animating and doing all the movements and stuff. And I do like, I myself like to see which characters will say what in the private quarters. But when it comes to like that, like the bonding, like the invite and the bonding is different. Like, when it comes to bonding, I'm like, this is the dumbest shit. I don't know how, like, it's just so annoying, and it gets so old, and it's like, I don't know, man. I don't know how, I don't like, see, it's just like, I don't know how you can find that stuff entertaining. And I don't like, and to me, it just comes off like people who, having the same character say she loves you like after 20 fucking times, for someone who's already not down for it, it's just like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in Fire Emblem. Like, it's just the dumbest thing. I don't know how this shit can appeal to anyone who, like, fucking has had a relationship before. Like, it's just so superficial and fake. And yeah, it's a video game, but the way they push it is just like, ugh. And if you get a kick out of blowing on your 3DS or using your fucking stylus, which I lost my own stylus, by the way. I don't know where I put it. It's probably just chilling here somewhere. But if you get a kick out of that shit, then man, like, don't talk to me about that shit. If you come up to me and say you like that, if you came up to me in real life and said you like that shit, I would make fun of you very harshly. And I'm sorry, but I wouldn't be able to help myself. I really wouldn't. Even if you're like my best friend who has like a hard time like socializing with people, I'd still make fun of you for it. I'm sorry, I would. That's just who I am. I would do that. And that's an assholeless thing to say. Yeah, it probably is, but I never said I was not an asshole. So that combined with my Twitter account. I will admit my Twitter account is pretty obnoxious. I just say what's on my mind, and usually it's like my first reactions to things, and it's never really giving it a second thought. Like, I feel like in these podcasts, I have time to, give things second thoughts, think about things critically. But when it comes to my Twitter and it comes to like, it's all my impulse reactions to things, and that's what comes out. And yeah, the standard frat boy asshole thing, I don't know, man. I like to drink alcohol. I like partying, I guess. I don't know. And that's how I am on Twitter, I suppose. But yeah, I do appreciate that you were willing to, cut through all like the cloudiness just to see how things kind of really go down and when it's more serious. So I appreciate that. I feel like a lot of people would have just said, fuck this guy, he's an asshole, and then they'd not bother with any of my content anymore. And I understand why people would do that, and I'm sure a lot of people have done that. And so it seems like you're probably in the minority of people who kind of stuck around and to see if anything kind of changed or see my content at all. So I really appreciate that. I think it's forward thinking. Is that the word? No, I don't know. It's respectable. It's a very respectable thing to do, and I appreciate that. And I also really enjoy the fact that you're going back and playing the old games. I think it's very disheartening, personally, like in all seriousness, very disheartening to me when people stick to Awakening or Fates and they refuse to play the old games because graphics or because they don't have the wifing aspect or the, that shit. It's just, I mean, maybe that's because that wasn't what Fire Emblem was. Like, yeah, you had shipping before, but like it wasn't so excessive and like in your face as in 3DS and 3DS Fire Emblem. So I really am very happy, and I'm sure a lot of quote unquote veterans or experienced Fire Emblem players really appreciate the fact that you take time and play the old games. A lot of them are very, very charming, and they all have their own sort of thing going with them. And that's like one of the best things. Honestly, that feels like that's probably like one of the best things an experienced Fire Emblem player can hear from a newcomer, is that they're playing the old games. Because I don't know if a lot of experienced Fire Emblem players will say this, but like there is this sense that like the games are being forgotten, and the games that they grew up loving are being forgotten and not talked about as much. And that really is, for people who are diehard fans, something that are probably, well, maybe not diehard, but people who like really are, who really love like the GBA games or any of the Western release games. I'm sure it goes for the non-localized like Eastern games, but I feel like that's a different sort of like feeling, because it's sort of expected for them not to really be focused, and it's not really popular. I mean, it is popular, but it's not as popular as like GBA, because the GBA was the first one. So there is this, I feel like there is this definitely like a fear for experienced Fire Emblem players that their games that they loved are going to be forgotten, and they're going to be replaced with these games that are so like fundamental, like they are Fire Emblem, but like how Fire Emblem are they, and what is Fire Emblem? And it's like that kind of meaning is actually getting blurred. Like, yeah, at its core, it's a strategy RPG that's turn-based, but like sometimes it feels like it's just deviating so far from, that. And for better or for worse for some people. And for a lot of experienced players, sometimes it's for the worse, and they don't want to think like that. So I understand that. And that's what makes me appreciative of you taking your time and going back to the old games. Is that all the comment said? 10 years from now, yeah. Yeah, and it's fun that you love Fates. I can't, it's fine that you love Fates. Some people hate Fates. Some people love Fates. It's a fucking video game. It's a big difference from the other games. It's going to happen. But more on that later, I suppose. I'm just reading all these good comments. You guys are great. I really appreciate the feedback. I'm actually surprised that this video, that the podcast got around 3,000 views, despite the fact that it was 3.25 hours long. And that was pretty sweet. I really appreciate that. Yeah, okay, here's another one. So Nathan Din says, reply if you want, Gas. I really agree with you about bringing more focus on the changing on the inside narrative, or just having more focus on something other than Corrin in general. This is where I think having guidance chancellors really would help. Serving to give opportunity to add more to the narrative and explore different parts of the story, I wish intelligence systems would drop the Avatar My Unit thing. So instead of giving most attention to an inherently bad part of the story, the writers can do something with what is good. Anyways, just my 2 cents. Also, what did you guys think of the ending dialogue for Chapter 25 with Azura and Corrin crying over Ryoma's death? I too love seeing Corrin get shit on, and it was a good drama to have Corrin having faced the crappy reality of his decision, and knowing that he has to stick with it or else everything goes to shit, and all the genocide would not be worth it. I wish that was played as heavily before the ending chapters of the game, to be honest. Yeah, there's this definitely like a big sort of debate on whether, well, not probably, I feel like based on what I've seen between like conversations about the Avatar, is that the Avatar is not good for the story and for the writing, because based on Fates' track record of the 4 games where 3DS has been, centered around the Avatar. I mean, I haven't played Birthright, and I've only gotten 1/3 through Revelations, but and I've played the entirety of Conquest and watched and saw the story unfold 3 times. It's just, when you have such a huge focus on the Avatar, it's like the writing isn't going to focus on many other characters, because they aren't the Avatar and they aren't quote unquote you. I don't really think that the Avatar is you. I think you're just a face paint. I think you're just a paint job of Corrin, because Corrin has a set personality, even though it's not a personality, and he has ideals, and he has only ideals, really. But yeah, it's what I think too. It's like, when you have a character that depends so much on, I suppose, like your own and like your investment as a person, if that makes any sense, then it takes away from the screen time of other characters in the story. I think of Tearing Saga, actually, and how, yes, there's Runin, who is the main character, but every single side character has their own sort of situation going on that's already within the story. And it doesn't even take away that much from like the game at all, because the writing so far is for the most part concise enough to the point where they can have good cutscenes that piggyback off the opening or ending events of a tearing saga chapter. Like, you have the main campaign, which is, your standard fare, like a prince is rescuing a princess, yada yada yada. It's definitely very different from Conquest or 3DS or whatever, but they do make the effort to have these side characters, giving them agency. And I feel like when you only rely on support conversations that are already kind of shitty in 3DS to develop these characters, then it really takes away from the story as a whole. Because even talking about actual, like, official Fire Emblem games, think of Sacred Stones. Think of the most memorable characters in Sacred Stones. When I think of the most memorable characters in Sacred Stones, I'm thinking like Dwessel, I'm thinking Null, I'm thinking Joshua, La Rachel, or La Rachel, or La Rachel, or whatever the fuck you pronounce it as. I know you guys fucking got on my dick about that shit in the review. But these characters or Innis, like, these characters who were able to be their own person and have their own goals within the main campaign, instead of just waiting till the end or waiting till you grind fucking supports after the fact that the game is over. And adding on to that, their supports, the FE8 supports were just the best. They were just the best. I mean, Dwessel is one of the best characters in the entire game. He has amazing role in the game, in the main campaign, and all of his supports are fucking fantastic. So that's what I think is a huge flaw in the My Unit, among other things, which I can't really think of right now. But one that really gets me is that, like, the side characters get nothing, because the game isn't about them. It's about the avatar. It's about quote unquote you, which is bad which is bad for me. Like it could be good, sure. I'm sure there are other games who have worked it really well with a first person, like, My Unit thing in a game, but Fire Emblem is just fucking the pooch big time on it. And in terms of Gaiden chapters, yeah, I mean, Gaiden chapters could help, but honestly, like, there's not a lot of dialogue in Conquest. Like, there's more dialogue in Conquest than in 3DS, but that's not really saying much. But there's still a lot of room for, like, other characters to be themselves. But the thing is, like, another issue that I have with the writing and the characters about this game and how they're kind of forced to not really do much is because their role is already set by the time you see them for the first time. Think of all the characters who are recruitable in Fire and Fates. They're all just like 95% of them are all just like retainers. So you already you already kind of know where they come from and shit. I mean, you don't, but like the mystery and like the intrigue for me is not really there. Again, I'm thinking of Tearing Saga, where you have so many, exiled characters or characters who like are super dedicated to not Runin, but to the kingdom. And that's something else. Like Silas and everyone else, they're not really dedicated to Nor as a whole, but they're dedicated to their, the royal family, and by extension, Corrin. So it's like their conversations I can't really imagine their conversations going that far. But that's just my opinion. I don't know if Gaiden chapters would... I guess Gaiden chapters would help. But yeah, I feel like what would really help is if the characters are, like, from the offset, they could stay as retainers, but they could be fighting for something more than for their royal standing or whatever. What did you guys think of the ending? Yeah, I mean, I thought the ending of chapter 25 was pretty solid. It was definitely one of the better parts of the writing. It was just because it was the most like realistic thing and the most kind of shitty thing for Corrin to go through, and I really liked that. I mean, it was great seeing Corrin actually feel like an asshole and, regretting his decision, because he should be regretting his decision. He deserves to be shit on because he is responsible for collateral damage and the deaths of thousands of soldiers and villagers by the hands of Garen, Hans, and Yago. So this is by Ernesto Reyes. I hope I'm getting your last name right. Ryoma is the only Hoshiden sibling who knew that Korin is only a stepbrother or sister of the Hoshiden siblings. So Hinoka, Takumi, and Sakura calling Korin their brother and sister isn't ironic. Korin siding with Hoshido still makes more sense, because why the flying fuck would Korin side with the old man who killed hundreds of innocent people in the explosion cutscene and didn't care at all if Korin was going to die with his mother or not? Go read the script for Birthright Chapter 6 and see why Korin deciding to fight with the Hoshidans isn't logical. I think you meant to say logical here, because you just said it makes more sense to play with Hoshido. Nintendo should be ashamed for false advertising for Birthright, though. Okay, see, that was my fault. I assumed that they all knew from the beginning. Even so, Ryoma's still kind of a douche, because if he's the only one who knew from the beginning, then his fixation on calling him brother or sister, depending on what your gender is, seems still pretty shady. The Hinoka, Takumi, and Sakura thing, not being the brother and sister thing, is also pretty shady, because if she foresaw it, then that means they would kind of know, I guess, if you play for the Hoshida route. I just still think it sucks that, like, they admit to you that they're not your, like, they'll knowingly do it. Like, I guess at the end of the day, like, Ryoma and another sibling knows that you aren't blood related, and it was like Ryoma lied from the beginning. And it kind of just makes me not like Ryoma that much. Maybe I yeah, is the only Hoshiden sibling who knew that Korin was a stepbrother. And I was just like, man, that's really shady shit. Korin siding with... Why the flying fuck would Korin side with the old man who killed hundreds of innocent people? I understand why Korin would do that, but I think it would be better if... The thing is that why I side with Nor in this particular situation more than Hoshido is because it seemed like Korin was genuinely interested in finding out why that happened. And the only way he could find out why that happened was if he went with Nor and to try to understand, why Garen would do such a thing. That's sort of how I interpreted it. And also I feel if I was Korin, and this is sort of where the my unit sort of like decision making thing comes through, and this is probably one of the brighter parts of the story, is like the actual decision Korin has to make. I feel like as myself, I would be more inclined to fight for my people I grew up with rather than these siblings that I don't really know that much. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm not a naive fucker, but I just be really like, yeah, I mean, what Garen did and what the Gonglari did was pretty like indefensibly evil. But that said, if Korin's logic was, I need to go back to find out what happened and see if I can do anything to stop them or investigate the situation with the people I love and the people who definitely love me, then to me, in that light, that's how I see why Nor would be the more logical choice. But again, like, it depends on how you read the situation, and that's how I read my situation if I was in there. Avery Johnson asks, have you seen the DLC around the kids? If Intelligent Systems pulled a genealogy of the Holy War and made one of the game, this would have been a strong title. I've never played the DLC. I think it's Heirs of Fate, but I honestly don't plan to give Intelligent Systems any more of my money after Revelations. Maybe Birthright, but probably Birthright, but probably not for a while. I'm not really terribly interested in continuing my Birthright run or my Revelations run. So I don't know about Birthright. Let's see. Is there any more? Anyway, so that was the 3 reply to me comments. Thank you. I hope that you liked my answer. I really appreciate them all. Anyway, same thing goes as last time. If you have a question or a thing you want to ask me or talk to me about, just put reply to me, and then I'll get to you in the next video. I also, before I want to get to the Revelations thing, talk about my final thoughts on Conquest. I didn't really give like a review sort of thing. I'm air quoting right now. All in all, it's a good game. Conquest is a good game. Off Lunatic, I don't know. I don't want to say anything absolute because I haven't played the entire thing yet. And I haven't read all the supports yet. But based on my first playthrough on Lunatic, it's good. There's still issues, obviously. Some gimmicks are. It's definitely not perfect, but it's definitely not super bad. The story is atrocious, in my opinion. The characters, for the most part, are forgettable. They don't really give a good first impression at all. And I really don't like the idea of relying on, of forcing people to rely on supports to see if they're interesting or not. I don't like that idea. I feel like characters should have some sort of reasoning to be there that is deep and is meaningful. And with Conquest, it feels like they're all just fucking retainers or something. Or Keaton is like just exploring in Silkensia for no fucking reason, apparently. So, yeah, it's just the characters based off that are like, eh. There's no real like Innis or Dwessel or whatever. But that said, there's a handful of from my experience, there's a couple good ones. I haven't read the supports, like I said, but just based on my impressions, supports, the C supports all suck pretty much. They're all sort of the same awkward, like 5 lines. Some of the supports aren't great. Some of the supports for some units are really good. Yeah, it's just kind of most of the aspects I'm getting are just kind of middle of the road. Some of the chapters are ingeniously designed. Some of the chapters aren't ingeniously designed. It's just like it does in terms of story to characters to gameplay, kind of 1 out of 3 for me. Like the gameplay is really, really good, even on Lunatic, and I'm sure on hard or normal I would get a more fuller view of it. And I should probably play at least on hard, but I can't really be fucked to play it right now since I'm playing Revelations, but I don't know. So yeah, for me, it's a solid game. Like it's not fantastic, but the gameplay is very amazing in some parts, but I don't know, maybe it's just because it's Lunatic, but I don't know if that holds up the entire thing. For me, it doesn't, because I look for more things. Rather than gameplay. But even said, I respect Conquest for trying so hard, and trying these gimmicks. From a design perspective, it's really risky to make these mechanics and make these gimmicks, and it's very easy to fuck it up, as Conquest has fucked up. But even so, the fact that they're willing to try new things is something that I really respect. As a chapter designer myself, that will always be a plus for me. For Fates in general, actually, is that they're trying new things, and I respect them for that. I don't really like giving number grades because I feel like they're super hard to keep track of what's the standard, but I'd play it again, right? I might play it again. I'm sure a lot of people have already played it many, many times through. But yeah, Conquest was solid for the gameplay. It was definitely solid. For everything else, I'm kind of being wishy-washy in my final thoughts, but that's kind of it. I mean, it's been like a week and a half since I've played it, so I'm kind of foggy on everything, but it was good. It was a good game. Actually, you know what? I'm going to have this be its own thing. I'm just going to upload this video. Yeah. So that was the, I guess, the conclusion for the Conquest Lunatic podcast. Tomorrow I'll start fresh with the Revelations one, because I'm kind of running short on time because I have people coming over in 2 hours. So I'm just that was my final Conquest podcast. I hope you liked it. It was kind of rushed, and I just wanted to answer questions and, get into other things before I do the Revelations one. So thank you so much for listening. Sorry that you thought this was going to be the Revelations one, but it will be coming up soon, and it will be going from chapter 6 to chapter 12. So yeah. Anyways, my name's been Gast, and I'll catch you guys next time. See you later.